All right, so what's next on the agenda?
So I think probably one of the bigger things that happened this week in terms of consuming every media outlet you follow is the Iowa caucuses happened.
Yeah.
We should add some presidential theme music in there somewhere.
Yeah, that would be really nice.
Yeah. So the Iowa caucus happened.
Just like we talked about last time.
We knew it was going to happen, right, because we previewed it. Basically, what we ended up with after a very long night, I think the caucus results started at... I want to say it was almost like 4 hours between when the caucus results started coming out and when we actually knew what had happened. On the Democratic side, Martin O'Malley got like 0%. Like I think he got 0.5% total.
That shocked me.
No, it didn't.
I thought he was going to take the whole thing.
Poor guy. I mean, he doesn't get enough credit. He really was a better candidate.
And I listened to
0.5%.
some of his like little just coming across videos and things of his, and he was like a decent guy. Like he really, he
did a good job. He got suffocated in the Hillary Clinton Bernie Sanders shadow.
Yep, he did.
Which is unfortunate. So
he didn't matter next to those two, unfortunately.
Yeah, and all along there was a lot of rumors that he was doing it for like an attempt to be a VP kind of thing. So that could happen too. But he dropped out after that night and he suspended his presidential campaign. Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton started, when the results started coming out, they were like 1.5%, 2% apart. Mm-hmm. By the end of the night, it slowly slimmed down to I think that the final result was 0.3% was the difference. It was a 0.3% difference
between the two of them.
And it eventually came out that Hillary Clinton kind of had, the 0.1% advantage she needed or whatever. They've certified the results in Iowa and Hillary Clinton is now the winner. But it was really close and there's a lot of talk about, so the Republican race turned out to be, I was expecting the Republican race to be more interesting than the Democratic race, but they turned out to be equally interesting because what happened is through the first half of the night, Rubio was a little bit farther behind Trump and Cruz and they were basically in a tie. And then by the end of the night, Cruz came out with a 4-point lead to Trump, and Trump only came within like a percentage point of Rubio. So Trump not only did not win the Iowa caucus, but he almost came in third. And Rubio, who was polling at like 10% going into Iowa, got over 20% of the votes.
Yeah, I thought it was really surprising. I mean, I was very excited to see anybody beat Trump. I was a little nervous about that. But to me, actually, the most interesting thing that came out of the Republican side of it was just the candidates that are kind of falling out of it now that they didn't end up, going far enough with it. So I know Rand Paul.
And that breaks my heart so
Me
much.
too. Me too. Rand Paul was my guy for the GOP, but
he was so good.
He's out.
He's so good on the GOP. I hope he wins his Senate race because he honestly, and the reason why I like him so much is he's the only one on the GOP ticket, or at least formerly was on the GOP ticket, who made any attempt to appeal the GOP to minority populations, to populations that don't normally vote GOP, don't normally vote for Republicans. And he made a very strong effort. He went into Detroit and went into the middle of the city and was like, Republicans can help you on this stuff. There are ways that we can enact laws that benefit you and solve these problems. And he was doing a really good job of proving that the Republican Party can be trusted by more than one small faction of America.
Oh, yeah. Well, the interesting thing about Rand, and the reason that I personally liked him, was it seemed like he had really the strongest grasp on what his stance and ideologies were for things. Yeah. And so even if...
they're weird ideologies. They're ideologies people don't understand normally.
Granted, they were, but you throw a lot of questions at a lot of other candidates, and it seems like they kind of have to mull stuff over, and you can tell that they kind of try to think of what constituents would think or what potential voters would think. And to me, it seemed like Rand Paul really stood where he stood. Yeah. No matter, whether you liked that or not, he was definitely somebody who really had a set of beliefs that he went by.
And that's what we say about Bernie on the Democratic side,
which is the same thing, just the other direction.
His views are a little bit weird, but he's consistent on them.
Oh yeah, if Rand would have actually gone up and Bernie had come up above Hillary, and those two were the ones, that would have been the most polarizing race this country could have seen. But I also think it would have been...
I would say Cruz versus Sanders would have been polarizing. I think Rand Paul versus Sanders would have been a more friendly race.
Well, the thing is, though, where I was going was not only would it be polar, but you look at everybody who supports Sanders, the thing that everybody says about him is that he is one of the most, integrity-driven guys on the left. And Rand Paul, everybody on the GOP is saying he's like the most integrity-based guy on the right. Yeah. And so putting those two against each other, it would have been very polar, but it would have been a race that almost everybody in the country would have respected really deeply.
So in addition to Rand Paul, we also lost Rick Santorum, which nobody's really crying about. And we also lost Mike Huckabee, which also no one is crying about.
Frank Norris might be crying about that. But apart from him...
I mean, I think Rick Santorum did just as bad as Martin O'Malley. He got like a fraction of a percent, I feel like. And I think Huckabee got like 2%. Like, they got nothing.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of keep forgetting Huckabee's in the race. And whenever I hear his name, I'm like, oh yeah!
That crazy dude.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the clip of Jeb Bush asking his audience to clap for him?
No.
Yes.
Do we have that?
Yes, we do. It's
Can we play that?
Yeah.
Talking a big game without backing it up. I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
How embarrassing.
With the most like desperate, just like, wait, no one clapped. Yeah.
His face is just like, I practiced for applause there.
I'm still in this. People still care about me.
Bush.
But that's the funny thing, though, is that he was at one of he was speaking to people that were there to support him.
They were there to clap for him in the first place.
And they weren't clapping for him.
You might need to rethink your strategy if the
That's
people that
a problem.
came for you weren't clapping for you.
Yeah.
So that's what's happened. Rick Santorum threw his support behind Marco Rubio and endorsed him. And since the Iowa caucus, Marco Rubio has gotten a ton of endorsements. So what the general consensus has come out of Iowa as we go into New Hampshire, which is less than a week away, which will be tomorrow when this podcast gets published, is that it's basically coming down to three people, which is going to be Trump, Cruz, and Rubio. And I would be willing to argue and probably bet that Trump will lose the New Hampshire primary and he will just continue to fall. I think so.
From there. He's still polling really, really, really high.
I saw some numbers today that said he was still high, but that second place had like 5 people tied for it. And on top of that, he also had like a 10-point advantage in the Iowa polls before the Iowa caucus. He got turnout was like 10% less of what he polled at. Yeah, so I think his polls are too high in New Hampshire. I think his polls are too high across the country.
I don't know. I think Trump might unfortunately hold on just a little bit longer.
I don't think so. I think it'll be Cruz Rubio. One will get first and the other's going to get second.
I wouldn't be sad if that did happen.
I wouldn't be sad.
No, I'd be very okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, Rubio comes out to be a lot more conservative than most candidates the GOP will nominate, but I think that he also is a little bit more conscious of how different his opinions can be from the general public. I've heard him talk on a lot of divisive issues, and he basically says, I recognize that not everyone feels this way, and I'm willing to compromise, and I'm willing to find some middle ground between us. And to me, that's something I haven't heard a Republican say in a long time. Especially one with a lot of conservative values.
Yeah.
So it'll be good for the party.
Yeah, I kind of sometimes wonder if Marco Rubio might be a little too traditional for what the country's looking for today. I think that might be somewhere where Ted Cruz has a little bit of an advantage over him.
I can't think of a more conservative Republican candidate since potentially Ronald Reagan, if not earlier than that. What Republican candidate in the last 20, 30 years has been as conservative as Rubio? And Cruz is definitely farther right than Rubio.
Yes.
You know? So I agree with you.
I just think, Rubio's a little bit more of a traditionalist.
Yeah. But I think the establishment of the Republican Party wants that over a Cruz.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more core consensus, kind of the more middle side of it.